Today, I'm going to share with you perspective on leadership. And this is what we've been confronted with is new challenges. And this calls for a new approach. In the last 50 years, we've seen extensive research, academic papers, books on leadership. There's an abundance, articles, blogs, over 1 million. Everybody seems to have an opinion of what good leadership is, whether they've read articles, whether they learn it or not. And justly so. We all know intuitively when we see good leadership. Bad leadership can make our lives very difficult. And if we think back to the full lockdown of 2020, we had nations such as the US and the UK having daily briefings to the public. And regardless what you may think of the leaders at the time, and whether you even hold any regard or validity to what they were saying, the point is that they were holding the space, telling people that they were going to be okay. Other countries had meetings, family meetings, merely to inform when the next level of lockdown would change. That could be every 3 to 4 weeks, and the rest of the time, people were searching online, sometimes fake news, manipulated data, and this, in essence, disrupts and allows others to control the narrative of what is going on. Poor leadership. So in this changing landscape around us, which I'm sure you will all agree, through disruption, unintended consequences, but also through incremental change, where one day we just wake up and say, things are different. Eric Ries popularized the term to pivot when we're putting content out, but the market doesn't bite. So we need to feed back and readjust. But something a lot more drastic is the co-founder of Intel, Andrew Grove, in Only the Paranoid Survive, where he talks about a strategic inflection point where nothing works anymore. Our system doesn't work. There's been a dramatic change in the landscape. And at this point, we realize the status quo is no longer business as usual. And to quote the former Supreme Commander of the Allied Forces, General Wesley Clark, there is no more business as usual anymore. So what is this landscape that has changed? Now there's various commentaries which are being put to the fore, such as globalization, where we live in a highly interconnected world. Years ago in The Economist, there was a picture of America. America was sneezing, and the caption was, "America sneezes, the world catches a cold." Today has also been described as the information age, where everybody has access to information, regardless if you are from an Ivy League university, Harvard, Yale, or from a small little village in developing area in middle of Africa. We all have access to the same information. But this also opens the path for manipulation. And a leader, even though the information could be from the source, so to speak, the competitor or others could use this for nefarious means. Information into production is also referred to as the fourth industrial revolution, where we have the Internet of Things. Another term we use is VUCA, volatile, unstable, complex, and ambiguous, which is originally a military term used in the 1990s to describe the modern day battlefield. So this forms GIV, all right, these three. And let us leave it to the historians in 100 and 150 years time to debate what times we're living in. Can we just agree that all three pose challenges and all three hold a measure of truth? And I'd like to propose we refer to that as the GIV era, GIV, for globalization, information age, or industry 4.0, and VUCA, the time of give, the E for the era. And give today means to hand somebody something, but the original meaning of that term was to give and take. It had a dual meaning. And this is something we need to relearn, because our system is based on an infinite resource which we do not have, production and so forth. And also for leaders, it's not only about having your status and the perks. There's a reason why you have that. It's to serve. It's a give and take. So the term I'd like to introduce for leadership is ownership-driven leadership. And before I do, just a background on myself. Leadership mental resilience coach and consultant, but also MD of Center for Leadership and Coaching. This is a merger from Center for Leadership, which I co-founded, and Bruno Bruningal Coaching. And this merger is taking place the next month just to increase the focus from coaching and mentoring as well as leadership and management. Authors, new book I've been working on actually almost 6 years now. This and a second book, which will be launched next year, speaker and podcaster. So this book is available on Amazon, but bookstores only next month. So let's go back to the ownership-driven leadership and what it entails. Now this is on 3 phases, 3 components, ownership. And this is a word that's used often in the military, whereby there's little tolerance for a lack of commitment. In an unforgiving realm on the battlefield, there are dire consequences. The first is to own who you are, own the self. Next is to own the mission, believe in the mission and engender this in your people, and then own the results. If things don't go your way, no backstabbing. So let's look into owning who you are. A critical component of owning who you are forms the basis of self-leadership. I'm a firm believer that resilient leaders build resilient teams. If you have a lack and you're feeding from the system to support you because you cannot support yourself, you're taking from the ecosystem. And as a leader, we need to ensure efficiency and that we're feeding into the ecosystem. So self-leadership before leading others. Another component is also, we all have a story. This part of us that we are not necessarily proud of, part that we hide or suppress or deny from others. Carl Jung referred to this as the shadow. And this is something that we need to accept and look into it and not condemn, because that would not liberate. And a powerful way to achieve this is by going within. This is through meditation and self-reflection. And then for the leader to actually raise this awareness, create this consciousness for the collective so they too can raise their consciousness and address their needs, if you consider Maslow's hierarchy. Now the second part, own the mission. Now we often hear you need to give 100%, and many people also say you need to give 110%, which doesn't exist, but I understand they're talking about the discretionary, although my first degree was pure mathematics, and that's technically incorrect when I hear people saying that, but I get what they're saying. However, belief and emotion, so that meaning we attach to the belief, if we have that, then 100% commitment is the natural consequence. So it starts with this belief and the meaning we attach to it. Now Napoleon Hill, who I'm sure you're all familiar with, who wrote a well-known book on Think and Grow Rich, although it's about making money, it can be applied to all aspects of life. But he said that thoughts are things, and tapping into the subconscious and the conscious mind, where the conscious mind is the goal setter. That's where we set the goals. But the subconscious is the goal getter. It's always working. It never stops. And unfortunately, for most of us, it's working against us. There are 2 ways to program to get the subconscious mind to work for you. The one is a passive route, other is active. And the passive is continuing through continued work. And there's 5 steps to it. First is to really go into why you want something, to understand this meaning. And the second, through auto-suggestion, continuously affirming, starting the day off with that. And third, to visualize, but actually seeing yourself in the movie and heighten those senses, where there's also emotion attached to it, where you physically feel alive, feel so real. And lastly, through continued repetition, so that the neural pathways are actually created. A friend of mine who was a 4-time Olympian, he actually got the gold for 200-meter Commonwealth Games, the only person to beat Michael Johnson 4 times in history. He would always say to me that the day before the race, he would visualize crossing the finish line so that he was not intimidated by big personalities. If he's beating them, he doesn't say, well, I'm beating, and then trips over his own feet. because he had already been there in his mind. And on the active side, so we've got that's the passive, and on the active, it's almost when you're taking on a big challenge to get yourself in that zone, get the mindset right. And I spoke about this burning desire. If you think of this as a fire, a big fire creates a large amount of heat. Small fire will create a small heat. If you have a small burning desire, you'll have a small result. So it's actually tapping in, and things which do not mean as much is to deprioritize that and going with attitude do or die. So what did our ancestors do? When they went into an immense challenge such as the battlefield, they did a war cry to tap into that warrior energy. And if we look at the word slogan, which I'm sure you're familiar with, it has its roots in the Gaelic, Sla, which is people gathering, and Gan is a calling. So in peacetime, that would just be to gather everybody to make an announcement. However, in wartime, a slogan meant a battle cry. And then it entered into the English vernacular as we know today. So the question is, every morning when you wake up, what is your slogan to get you ready for the day? And even if you do get your mind ready and in that zone, and you've done the work with the subconscious, there's no guarantee that it'll be easy. Be prepared for the 3 Ps. And what do I mean by that? Patience. It's this, what the Japanese call Kaizen, continued improvement, just consistency. Or Sam Harris calls the 1% rule. If you can just improve 1% per day, they're all saying the same thing. Second P is this persistence, but both the soft persistence in the form of perseverance and the hard persistence in the form of grit, or as in South Africa they say vasbyt. Now the third is perspiration. Be prepared that there will be a measure of discomfort and it will be frustrating, but every heartache has benefits, and there's no guarantee you'll hit the target. But if you don't, there's something much worse called regret. And even if you don't hit the target, there's 2 byproducts guaranteed. It's pride and character. You've done that. Been there, done, got the t-shirt, as they say. And that's only earned. We heard our earlier speaker, actually, where she said about the videos, the comments, lockdown. That's character. And it's lesson learned to go forward. But the leader doing this inner work then puts the leader in a position to engender this in the collective, for them also to own the mission, believe in the mission, and give it meaning, to access that discretionary effort. Now the third component of ownership is to own the result. Now, my first 10 years as an adult, when I was in the military, I'd always look to live life hard. My reasoning was then I can live life easier as I get older and help others once I'm at the top of the ladder. But I did not celebrate the victory, because every time I was thinking, job's not done yet. I didn't enjoy the path, the milestones. So then when the big one arrived and I got the qualification or whatever it was, concluded the exercise, I didn't know how to celebrate. And I thought, hey, the day feels like the same. I haven't changed. Life's still the same, because I didn't prime myself. So important to prime on the path. And no, I didn't have a mentor to teach me this. But also, if things go wrong, the shortcomings, if the result doesn't go your way, own the result. No backstabbing. Often we see backstabbing culture emerge. It was his fault, it was his fault. A leader lacking accountability, saying it was your job. I delegated to you. Yes, you delegated it. There is a measure of accountability even if you delegate. It's trust but verify. So own your part and inspire others to do the same. Now in modern times, there's a justice system that we have, whereby if you do something wrong, you spend your time, you do for the crime, and then there's a forgiveness in theory where you can reintegrate into society. However, on social media, there's no such thing. There's the social media police, and the consequence of this is that even if the violator, if you want to call it that, is not forgiven, on the other side of the continuum, there's unforgiveness. And this is referred to as the cancel culture. And if somebody wanted to cancel you, unfortunately, there is that risk, because there's a lack of ownership of the result, even if you go on your hands and knees. And despite all the good you may have done, one bad event, one bad move could diminish your legacy. So if we look back, Mike Tyson, he was unbeaten, 37 fights, 37 wins, Guinness Book of Record holder for the youngest heavyweight champion. He was undisputed, held all the belts. In his fight against Buster Douglas, he was a 42-1 favorite. He got knocked out. He lost. And in the press conference, he said, you know, Mike, isn't this a mere blip because you've got this track record and you'll be back and you'll still be all these things. You'll still be in the Guinness Book of Record. And his answer was, you're only as good as your last fight. And I'd like to challenge this because you get to define the story. Tomorrow is another day, another opportunity to define your story. You in control of that, regardless of the result. So ownership, driven leadership to engender this in the collective so you can own who you are, own the mission, and own the result.